Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of the EconUnited podcast. I'm your host, Stella. Sorry for the delay on getting this episode out, and as a little apology, this one's going to be a long one, so grab a coffee or a snack. Today, we're taking an in-depth look at a topic that blends politics, fiscal policy, public finance, labor markets, social safety nets, and national economic stability all at once: the United States government shutdown and its economic impact. While often framed as a political stalemate or a headline story, a government shutdown is first and foremost an economic event. It affects federal employees, businesses, state operations, families, financial markets, and long-term public planning. In this episode, we will explore why shutdowns happen, how they ripple through the economy, the consequences for households and businesses, and why the effects can persist even after government operations resume. So, buckle up, because this is going to be a long ride. A government shutdown occurs when Congress fails to pass appropriations legislation or the president refuses to sign it, effectively suspending funding for federal agencies and departments. Unlike other countries that allow government operations to continue under prior funding, the United States system requires explicit authorization for government spending. This means that during a shutdown, many federal operations must pause unless deemed essential for safety or national security. Economically, this pause is significant. Agencies that stop functioning cause government consumption and investment spending to decline, and a portion of the federal labor force is temporarily unpaid. Even though back pay is often restored once shutdown ends, the economic impact is not neutral. The lost time, delayed spending, and deferred projects do not automatically restart. The 2025 shutdown, which lasted from October 1st through November 12th, was the longest in U.S. history. It occurred during a period of economic readjustment as the country was navigating post-pandemic structural shifts, inflation management, and a transforming labor market. This timing amplified the effects, as federal operations increasingly intersect with private sector activity, research initiatives, and regulatory oversight. One of the most immediate consequences is felt in the labor market. Federal employees faced furloughs, leaving them without pay during the shutdown, while accepted employees continued to work without immediate compensation. Even temporary delays in income have cascading effects. Households reduce discretionary spending on restaurants, retail, and travel, which in turn reduces revenue for businesses that rely on local and regional demand. Even after back pay is issued, the economic activity lost during the shutdown period does not automatically recover. Closely connected to labor disruptions are the impacts on public services and social programs. Programs such as SNAP, housing assistance, school meal initiatives, and Medicaid administrative processes rely on consistent federal funding to operate smoothly. When the shutdown paused or slowed these functions, households dependent on timely benefit distribution faced uncertainty. Families had to adjust spending, often dipping into savings or using credit to make ends meet, which demonstrates how political gridlock can directly affect day-to-day life. At the same time, businesses also felt the ripple effects. Companies relying on federal contracts, research grants, regulatory approvals, or tourism near federal sites encountered delays, frozen payments, and disrupted planning cycles. Small businesses were particularly vulnerable because many operate on thin margins and have limited revenues. Even after the government reopened, the backlog of delayed work and postponed approvals continued to affect operations, creating lingering economic inefficiencies. These individual and local effects accumulate to influence the broader economy. Reduced government consumption and delayed administrative spending can slow GDP growth temporarily, while uncertainty affects consumer confidence and investment decisions. For instance, when federal data releases are postponed, businesses and financial markets may defer hiring or investment, slowing overall economic activity. So even though a shutdown may seem like a temporary pause in government operations, its economic ripples extend far beyond the immediate political stalemate. Looking at past shutdowns helps contextualize these impacts. Shutdowns in 1995 to 1996, 2013, and 2018 to 2019 each had unique political circumstances, but they show common economic patterns. Households face immediate financial stress due to furloughed pay, consumer spending declined in affected regions, tourism revenues dropped near federal attractions, and administrative backlogs persisted even after operations resumed. The 2025 shutdown exceeded these previous examples in duration, magnifying these effects, especially for low-income households, small businesses, and contractors. A key takeaway from these historical patterns is that shutdown effects often outlast the closure itself. While employees may eventually receive back pay and agencies may resume operations, some losses are permanent. Delayed projects, lost revenue, postponed investments, and shifts in consumer behavior cannot be fully reversed. Economists sometimes describe this as a temporal distortion of economic activity. The missed time and misspending cannot simply be made up retroactively. Shutdowns highlight a deeper paradox. The federal budget functions as the central nervous system of public operations, yet its continuity depends on episodic negotiation and political alignment. When disagreements stall funding, the effects are tangible. Productivity slows, services halt, and households and businesses experience financial strain. This demonstrates that government policy and fiscal timing are intimately linked to economic outcomes. Beyond immediate disruptions, shutdowns also affect confidence. Businesses, investors, and even international partners monitor federal stability closely. Repeated or prolonged shutdowns can influence investment decisions, credit availability, and perceptions of economic reliability. This is why economists argue that shutdowns are not merely political inconveniences, but variables in national economic health. The 2025 United States government shutdown demonstrates how budget interruptions create multi-layered economic consequences. While many disruptions were resolved when agencies reopened and funding was restored, measurable effects remain. Delayed paychecks, interrupted public services, postponed projects, and reduced consumer and business confidence. Shutdowns remind us that fiscal processes are not merely political procedures. They are a fundamental part of economic infrastructure. Understanding their effects provides insight into the complex relationship between government policy, national economic stability, and the everyday lives of millions of Americans. Thank you for joining me on this episode of EconUnited. I'm Stella, and until next time, have a good morning, a good afternoon, a good evening, and a good night.